Welcome to Bible Over Brews News, Headlines, and End Times. And I am here with Keith, Tom,
What's up?
Gumby,
I am ever present.
and I'm Aaron Crew Juice Vaverka. And we are starting the evening with Franklin Castle Pumpkin Spice Ale. Named after our close neighbor with an eerie history that's best told with this new brew in hand. This tasty ale is mashed with delicate pumpkin, then spiced in the kettle with cinnamon, vanilla beans, and brown sugar. It's an ABV of 7%.
Yeah, I mean vanilla beans. Anything that's like nuanced enough that they're like, you'll be able to detect the vanilla beans, like, that's a bold statement.
Oh,
They're putting something out there.
Shout out to William.
yeah, William Krejci. We're thinking about you.
He's been on a couple times.
If you get a chance before he's finished, he might still be running a few of his haunted tours around Cleveland.
Yes, and pick up his books.
Oh my god, you can smell the vanilla.
Oh my lord.
It's like a pumpkin alcohol creamsicle on top. I haven't
Oh,
tasted
this
it
smells so
crap.
good. So right off the bat, it has a very, very like creamy fragrance on top of it. It's got a nice sugary nose.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, that is so pumpkin.
I'm just gonna sit here and smell it for a minute, guys.
Yeah.
Oh man. I'm getting high off this.
Yeah, I do smell the vanilla.
Yeah.
It's
I
like
told you, man.
That is
They-
very heady.
They put
Wow.
out, man. Wow.
that is like
It tastes really good in the can
Very
too.
smooth,
Yeah.
Smell it.
Very-
Mm.
easy drinking.
ooh. So
Oh, that's splendid.
hold on, I need to savor that for a second.
Yeah.
So, and it is a little bit of a caramely color. So it's not really a full orange. It's also not dark.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
But man, it's so I do get the cinnamon. There's definitely a nice punch of cinnamon. Pumpkin's definitely there. And I would say that vanilla is almost accented.
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
there, but it's more like an accent. It's not overbearing.
Just
It's
at the end.
yeah.
I think the whole like it feels like, how am I trying to explain this? Like, okay, if someone were to tell you, I'm gonna make a pumpkin pie beer, you would expect it to be like way too sweet, very thick.
Yeah.
This is like the pumpkin pie beer you didn't ask for, but you actually needed, because it's very smooth. It's mellow. It's the right sweetness for beer, but with that something that just takes you to Thanksgiving dinner.
I agree.
Oh man, this is
Well put.
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm not a big.
Pumpkin
I
spice
think,
guy.
as you know, I eat like blueberry stuff and all these crafts that are fruity. I mean, well, I gotta take that back because I like the citrus in IPA.
Yeah.
But generally, I don't like these type of drinks. You know,
Yeah, but it's
this
middle
one
of
I
the
could definitely say is very nice.
it's middle of the road enough to keep
I
you
mean, it's
hanging
very
on.
drinkable for me.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
pretty particular about that kind of beer.
And it's interesting. It says they used a Muscovado sugar. That's
Oh.
really interesting.
I don't know what that is.
Yeah,
but
where's
just,
that grown?
if you're using like a special sugar, you like are so sensitive to the delicate balance you have to maintain
Oh, sugar.
to do this thing. It's
I
like,
look up where that's grown.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure it's fancy.
Man.
Thank God we took over that country.
We're not ready for that yet.
Sorry. Bad joke. Bad joke. I didn't mean that.
That is, it's textured. Actually, I think the second sip was actually better.
You guys gotta try it.
I actually blacked out for like
I'm
about 30
convinced.
seconds there, just drinking this beer.
There's
I gotta
a-
confess.
I'm convinced there's a difference between putting it in your glass and in a can.
Well, there is, because so as you pour, it does release that like the CO2 and the gases. And fun tip for our listeners, if you only drink from a can and you talk about that bloated flavor or that bloatedness you get, that's because the gases have not been released. That's why you want to pour and let the head build, because that's the gases releasing and you won't feel bloated afterwards.
Learned something already.
Yeah.
But man,
For all these years, Aaron, I never heard it described that way.
And how you pour it
yeah.
is a right way and a wrong
I guess
way.
that makes a lot of sense, though.
I'll have to ask you what that was later because I'm still vibing off of that sip. I am out to space.
I think off the second and third sip, the vanilla is a little bit stronger, but still not overbearing.
Yeah. Ginger's really coming through for me.
Oh, there's ginger all day. Mm-hmm. That's good. The cinnamon.
Well done, Market Garden.
Cinnamon.
Well done.
Yeah.
Tip of the cap.
We'll let you stay in business.
Fantastic. So, you have a game for us.
Ah, yes. Well, to set the stage, so we are in, 3 or 4, I don't know how many weeks we are into the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson era. Of course, I can't even remember the timeline, so you're just going to have to bear with me that these happened in a sequence, and it felt like forever. Where we had, what's his face, Matt Gaetz? That's
Yep.
the guy, right? He, there's a whole provision when Congressman McCarthy. Is it Mike McCarthy? No, not Mike. That's Kevin McCarthy. Mike McCarthy is... No, he's not. I thought that was an actor or something. Anyway, Kevin McCarthy, he was the speaker for a while. There was a provision, what was a condition of him being elected with the conservative wing, that one other congressperson could raise whatever that vote is to like oust the speaker. There's a name for that. So they did, and it just took a couple of them voting, and Kevin McCarthy was gone. So then we went through, what was it? Steve Scalise was next. He didn't quite get the majority, and he bowed out. Then there was Jim Jordan, and that didn't work. And then Tom Emmer briefly. We all thought Tom Emmer would work, but then Mr. Trump called in some favors, and suddenly he wasn't working anymore. Because Tom Emmer had the sin of voting to certify the 2020 election results, which is a no-go in Mr. Trump's world. So then, remarkably, suddenly, we ended up with Mike Johnson, who is a representative from Louisiana, and most of us had probably never heard of him before. He is probably even a more prolific insurrectionist than Jim Jordan. But apparently that was not an issue for the more establishment moderate. I never knew that Kevin McCarthy was considered a moderate in Republican parlance, but apparently, yes, he is. So Mike is hardcore wingnut, but he got elected like on the first vote, I think. I think it took basically nothing to get him in there. I think everybody was just so sick. It was 3 weeks without a speaker. They were talking about having the interim speaker, that guy with the bow tie who looks like a dime store Tucker Carlson, McHenry or something like that.
Something like that.
They were talking about giving him like powers to just like keep pretending to be speaker. They were so desperate. But suddenly they got Mike Johnson in. And he is not someone that I think the establishment Republicans would have gone with if they didn't appear absolutely desperate to put a warm body on that chair.
Gotcha.
He is a deeply religious conservative. He's sometimes considered, I don't know if that's the right word or not, but people call him the architect of the objections in the House to the 2020 election. So like there was like 140 something representatives who voted not to certify the results of Pennsylvania and Arizona. And he was kind of the ringleader. He was the guy leading the meeting the night before. He was the one saying, God has brought us here for a great purpose. He's a very committed Southern Baptist. He says, if you want to know my views on anything, check out the Bible. So he's quite the Bible thumper.
Okay.
So there's been a bunch of articles recently about like, hey, what does this guy believe now that he's the one who basically sets the legislative agenda for the United States of America? And he's happened to have had a podcast for 69 episodes and counting with his wife.
Mike Johnson.
Yes, Mike Johnson. So people have been mining his quotes from there. He also wrote various editorials in the Shreveport, Louisiana newspaper. From his time as a member of what is the Alliance Defending Freedom now, but it had a different name before that. So he was defending a lot of their things and writing interesting editorials. I didn't want to I wanted to introduce us to him by way of quotes. So we could talk about things he said, good, bad, and ugly. I started listening to his podcast. I put it on 1.5 speed in my little podcast listener, listening to him day and night, way too long, drove myself crazy, got very bored of the man. And I was like, we have to do something better here. We can't just talk about him. We have to play a game. So I don't know if this is a game so much, but it's going to kind of look like Mike Johnson Jeopardy. So I have 18, if you count this little extra scrap of paper I made just a minute ago, 18 different topics. And I'm going to put them out on the table. And we're going to go around the horn between you three. Each of you in turn will pull a topic. And I will read a quote. And some of them will be things that we are open-ended discussions. Some of them will be have very specific questions related to them. And others will just be for laughs.
Oh, boy.
So, are you guys ready for our topics?
100%.
All right. So I'm going to lay them on the table here. We got parenting, artificial intelligence, the 2020 election. I think there's an extra one in there. Gun control.
It's a good thing these aren't controversial issues.
Israel,
No,
Palestine.
no. Thank God.
Oh, my Lord.
Apparently I loaded the ball up at the front first here. Sodomy. And that's his word, not mine.
You didn't define who he is, by the way.
Here, now they're getting silly.
It's,
Gay,
it's probably Danny DeVito.
gay friends. Friends who are Johns. Separation of church and state. Man, I'm still going. Beer.
Of course.
Go back up the top here. Immigration. Typos. Pandora's box.
Well, you have everything covered.
Christian engagement. Society.
That's our mic.
Oh, sorry. I will stop moving that. Oh, here we go. The one you guys were waiting for. Danny DeVito. The fall of Roe versus Wade. Susan Collins, the senator from Maine. And then the one I added at the very end, which is, oh, dang, mansplaining.
Did you say manspleen?
Mansplaining.
Mansplaining. All right.
So, who wants to go first?
Tom.
I say we go clockwise.
So I get to pick my topic.
Whatever one you want. Any criteria, does not matter.
Now, just to understand, it's nothing that we have to know about him. Per
Absolutely
se.
not. It's literally a way of randomizing the episode.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, let's start with Israel, Palestine.
All right.
Ooh,
That's
going
good.
heavy.
Going right for the jugular here. All right, let me find him. So I actually did not have a direct quote from him. I could have pulled some. They were rather boring. You will not be surprised to know that Mike is a big pro-Israel and pro, anything Benjamin Netanyahu wants to do kind of guy. He did note, he said, a prophecy was fulfilled when he was invited by a far-right arch-Zionist group to tour Israel on the West Bank. And he noted that he did not sense any conflict between the Israelis and the Palestinians.
Gonna be let Tom go first.
Hang on. No, but the thing I'm actually going to quote from his Twitter account here. This was not him. This was very shortly after the Hamas attack. He quoted this prayer. He said it was from one of the most influential leaders. Sent us a very specific prayer request this morning. One of them, who knows who it is. It had this. I'm going to read one paragraph from it. This is this prayer for, it's a difficult time and pray for people who are, suffering and things like that. And then it says that God places within the nations of the world an understanding heart and spirit, at the very least, if they will not help, that they will do no harm and not interfere with that which we must do, as difficult and unpleasant as it may end up necessarily being. So,
Wow.
yeah, you actually probably went for like the maybe single most depressing one.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Go get him, Tom.
What was your comment about him and prophecy?
So he, I'm trying to remember like all the details of this, but he basically went on a like private junket, tour of Israel, and like I think he specifically spent a lot of time in the West Bank. So that's the part where there's like Israeli and Palestinian settlements in different sections of it, and he was invited. It's like 12 tribes something group. It's a very far right Zionist group, and taking this tour, he was very specifically talking about how he sensed that everything was just fine between the Israelis and the Palestinians, that all the news reports about there being oppression or conflict or whatever were overblown, and that he said that it was the fulfillment of a prophecy that this group had invited him to Israel.
Yeah, well, right there, I would start and say I think that's his ego is pretty inflated to make a statement like that. To think that you as an individual were somehow prophesied that this this special event that you're attending was actually written about in the Bible.
Yeah.
I think that's a long stretch, and you have to have a pretty high inflated ego to even think that for a moment. So I'll start there. Now, I think you're right about most people didn't know him. I seen him on clips interviewed by different news agencies over, like they do a lot of our Congress and senators. Well, and really just about all the stations, especially the cable stations. So I can't say I never saw his face, but I didn't know much about him prior to it. And to your point about, they were pretty desperate to get a warm body, I would agree with that. It took a long time. And I think the fact that he's in the chair now, we'll have to see how well he organizes things, what kind of bills they pass. So I think, maybe the views I have about him going into starting out may not be that great. But I think we'll have to judge him over what he does and gets accomplished in the next year. And we'll see. Right now, it's not off to a good start because what he's passing over to the Senate, he knows won't be passed. So, I mean, it seems to be politics as usual. But, they call that negotiating. I don't know if it means government working or not, but it's they're negotiating. So we'll see. As you know, I'm conservative, so I'm not here to just to defend him, for no reason.
Yeah.
He's going to have to earn his credibility with me before I start trying to defend him.
Best way
And
to
there
be.
will actually be some defensible things on this board, so stay tuned.
I mean,
Okay.
that's a
pretty
loaded
egregious one.
topic,
That's
so
good. That's good.
I will stop there.
That's a fair assessment, Tom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No.
Okay. I was just going to say,
Do we each get to answer it?
I mean, anybody who wants to jump, this was an open-ended one. I was just
Like to
throwing
hear
because you mentioned
everybody's thoughts.
real quick because you mentioned the ongoing legislation that won't pass. So there is like an Israel aid package being bounced back and forth, and the Johnson-led package is specifically saying we will fund Israel if we take an equal amount away from the IRS for enforcing tax codes against rich people, which inadvertently might be doing a favor to those who don't want Israel's war to be funded.
Yeah. I saw that. No comment.
Not holding my
Go
breath on that one. Yeah, well, just to the couple of things you read. First of all, in his prophetic fulfillment trip to the West Bank, ironically, West Bank has never been under quote unquote Hamas control. So just get that out there.
Right.
They have been under PLO, the Palestinian Authority, and if he was on a guided tour that a lot of tourists happen in there for Christian people, for people who promote Zionism, of course he would feel that way. those guided tours are intended to feel that way and make Christians feel that way, as if all the true biblical Bible stories that we've grown up with, all of our dreams come true, like a Disneyland feeling. And at this point, I'm just not going to really sugarcoat it anymore. But, but as far as that prayer, in terms that he was actually praying that God would give people the discernment and the insight that if they don't know about certain things, that they would stand out of. Can you read that again?
Yeah, I was going to ask you.
Out of the way.
Yeah,
Here we go.
Please.
That God places within the nations of the world an understanding heart and spirit, at the very least, if they will not help, that they will do no harm and not interfere with that which we must do, as difficult and unpleasant as it may end up necessarily being.
Yeah.
And for context here too, this is like one of 4 paragraphs in this prayer, and it's got like one of those like pretty like contemplative backgrounds. So it's meant to be this like look like this flowery thing, and then if you actually go and read it and don't just skim over it and hit the like and like, yeah, prayers for Israel, you find like it's got this really heinous thing in there.
Yeah, it sounds almost passive aggressive.
Yeah.
Considering what I view has just been a completely imbalanced retaliation
Not yet.
to events that have happened there. It's as if he's saying, just don't say anything about it. We just need you to not acknowledge it. If you're not going to be pro-Israel and pro-USA right now, then at least don't speak up on some of the other atrocities right now. And for a nation to feel that castrated, that they can't decide one way or another for themselves, you have to be sovereign enough to take a stand either way.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable that he would even say something like that and somehow tie it religiously. It feels nasty. So that's kind of my short view on it. But.
Well said.
So now you get to pick the next one.
There you go.
Oh, you got no comments?
Oh, no comments.
Okay.
You two said everything I wanted.
That's right.
You two said everything I wanted to say.
I'm gonna try to go lighthearted. I don't know if this is gonna end up going that way, but as soon as you put it down, my eyes went toward it, and that's parenting.
All right. Let's hand it to, where was it? 'Cause I want to take it off the board so I don't pick it again.
Okay.
So take parenting for you. It doesn't actually matter if you take it, but I was like, that could be symbolic. What topics did we take? All right, let's see what he's got on parenting. So he said like a lot of things on this. Like he has like many podcast episodes, and it was like kind of hard to pick something. Like there's at one point where he's in a conversation with the guy who runs like the Noah's Ark Museum, like outside of Cincinnati, Ken Ham, and he's talking like he's letting Ken Ham ramble about.
Wait, how do you?
You just triggered Aaron.
Anyway, go ahead.
You said the K word.
Oh man, now I know a name because like Aaron brings up a bunch of names that trigger me, and now I know. Like, oh man, this is valuable information. Anyway,
There are ways to get me going. That's one of them.
so Mr. K, Mr. H, is he's talking about how the reason why kids are so messed up today is because they don't learn about young Earth creation and stuff, and how like everything in existence can be derived from Genesis chapters 1 through 11. So there's like all these rambling things here, and I almost went and typed down one of these quotes, but this is actually like interesting because I think it's interesting to introspect because it kind of feeds into a trope about the good old days versus the bad new days or whatever. So
Now, is this Mike speaking or
this is
Ken Ham?
now this part is so I was setting another example of something I didn't pick.
Okay.
What I did pick though, this is from his podcast episode. What we tolerate in this is like he's talking about 3 principles or something like that for how he raises his kids. And he says, what we tolerate in moderation, our children will excuse in absence. That's the explanation for the progression of truth decay in America that we talked about. This is why the cultural moral slide is happening in society, because what each generation tolerates in moderation expect that the next generation is going to take to the next level. That's what we've been seeing for 70 or 80 years now. I'll repeat that one little phrase because I think it's interesting to think about, like, because maybe there's some truth to it. I can find a million exceptions, but what we tolerate in moderation, our children will excuse in absence. So he's saying, as a parent, if I give a little on something, my kids are going to go off the rails.
Interesting.
That's pretty deep, actually.
Yeah. And I don't think it's 100% true because there's got to be a little bit of give and take. You know, it's I'm sure you've seen the same thing with your kids, but if I'm very heavy-handed to my children and I don't allow any give, then I just shut them down, right? And you get rebuttal. And then you shut them down, rebuttal, it leads to an argument, now they're grounded. Now, with what I would have done with my kids, and it's worked very well, if they have a question, I let them voice their question, and then I help them think it out. And instead of simply telling them directly, this is what it is, instead it's like, well, what do you think that scenario leads to? And I actually help them think through the problem. Mm-hmm. Because by thinking through the problem, you guide them on that thought process on what could or could not be a better outcome. And it develops thought process. It develops, good logic versus logical fallacy, right? So it's...
Yep.
Yeah, when I was thinking of this, I always, whenever I hear of somebody say like it was much better 70 or 80 years ago, I think about this article I read. I used to get Beckett magazine, and it was like a baseball card collector's magazine.
Okay.
This is like a late 1994 issue. And
Talking about Beckett. Is that the name of the magazine, Beckett? Yeah.
Did you get that?
I used to always get Beckett.
Oh my goodness. Awesome.
Nice.
So there was this one article, and it was talking about different players through the ages who complained about how the new players had no respect for the game. So it would be like, okay, that was like 1994 or 95. So it'll be like, oh man, that, it'll be, Reggie Jackson being like, that Manny Ramirez has no respect for the game. But then you would go back further and it would be like
though.
Joe DiMaggio would be like, that Reggie Jackson has no respect for the game. And then it'd go even further back and it'd be like Ty Cobb being like, Joe DiMaggio, that guy has no respect for the game.
I could see that.
So
I guess
got one
I'm
for
trying
you.
to get to the heart of his. What does that really mean that it was better 70 or 80 years ago? What does that mean for him?
right. Well, he talks a lot about, we got to take it back to the 1950s. That was the good times.
Well, let me give you a reference on this. Carrie and I went to Playhouse Square recently, and small audience. It's to watch a 1960 movie, Little Shop of Horrors.
Know it well.
And they came out with a little newsreel of 1960. You would swear it was like modern day CNN because everything going on in the world was chaotic at the time. There was rioting in the streets.
Yep.
There was war. There was all this stuff going on. It's like, yeah, the good old days, and I kept thinking I was born in 61. So that was going, that's right at the time I'm joining planet Earth.
Mm-hmm.
This wasn't this flowery, wonderful Garden of Eden scene. It was like a lot of stuff going on. So, yeah, there's been trouble and tribulation.
I'll raise you one.
Through the ages, and I think always will be.
I'll raise you one. I was reading a book that was talking about the first 500 years of the Roman Empire, and like especially between like 100 and 300 AD, it sounded like a lot of the stuff today.
Yeah.
It did not seem as different as I thought it would be.
Well,
And so one other like bit of context in there too is when he's talking about. Sorry, go ahead.
Before we move on, it's funny you say that because there's a quote from I think it was Socrates, and it goes back to the kids of his day, and he is complaining about how loud their music is and how long their hair is, and just like as if it was today. It was hilarious, just hilarious.
All I was going to say was the second your point. So when he's often saying these kind of things, he's usually talking about core culture war stuff. So he loves to talk about like gay marriage, for instance, or just gay stuff in general. And thinking back to what Aaron was saying about how you coach your kids through things, like even if you're in a framework where it's like you're like not okay with your kid being gay, like how well has it worked historically for extremely conservative, it's families who would not want that to happen to be like, you shall not be gay, you kid. Like, how did those kids turn out?
Well, I got to be honest. I mean, I grew up in a completely conservative evangelical home, and I can probably fill up all my fingers and my family members of people my age in my family who've come out of the closet, so to speak. So I don't know how well it really worked.
Yeah.
There could be other factors. I don't know, but in regards to the question, when I think about it, I love recently, me and the family, we love going back and watching like the Andy Griffith Show reruns. We've done all of them.
Those are great.
We've done all of the Leave It to Beavers.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We love them. I just love. It's kind of like a two-sided coin for me, because when I do think about that as the good old days, so to speak, there was a certain innocence that seemed to appeal. They weren't worried about a lot of the things that I feel like, because of the age of information and media overload, that younger generations and kids worry about today. In a sense, whether or not if younger kids even have sex or not at an early age, they've lost innocence in so many other ways. And so, the good old days back then, was a little different. But you could also argue that it was an age where you don't really control or question things. You did what you were told, no matter where that, may have you ending up. Whether that's, I'm only going to be Catholic because my parents are Catholic. I'm only going to be evangelical because my parents are evangelical. And therefore, your faith isn't really yours. It's something that was bequeathed to you, and you had to do it.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I kind of look at it both ways. I don't really quite know what he means by the good old days, but every generation has had its challenges.
Mm-hmm. And that almost feels... go ahead.
No, I was going to say, one of the great prophets of our time said, every generation blames the one before. All of their frustrations come beating at your door. Mike and the Mechanics.
Very nice.
That feels very, very Irish, because the Irish they're very split, right? One side's very Protestant, one side is very Catholic. Mm-hmm. They fight all the time, and you are what you're born into. Yeah. Right? So it's kind of like what, you're going with. It's some places it was very much like that.
It's a slippery slope, though, when you think about it, because, I kind of think of the story of the garden, the apple being bitten, and then our phones today having the logo of the apple.
Big bitten.
We have so much information at our fingertips that we can't ever go back to what the good old days were, because we essentially become gods. We know everything. And if we don't know it, we could just Google it, right? So there's so much of that I can understand what he's saying to some extent, but I don't know. Mm-hmm. It's got to be somewhere in the middle, I suppose.
And now with the advent of ChatGPT, you can actually Bing it, and it makes sense.
Right.
We'll get to ChatGPT here.
We'll have him on as a guest.
All right, Aaron.
Or her. It could be her.
Aaron, you're up. What you gonna pick?
Oh, I already know what I'm going for. Where is it? Where is it? Oh, yep.
Oh, of course, Danny DeVito. All right.
What did you pick?
Danny DeVito.
Perfect timing. All right. So the context here is...
I'm a fan.
Unbeknownst to many of us, but apparently not so much of the internet, Mike Johnson went kind of viral last year. I think last fall was about the time. And it was for a series of tweets or Facebook posts or something about an advertisement for a show called Little Demon. That was starring, it was an animated show on Cartoon Network, I think Adult Swim, or at least it was an adult cartoon. It was not intended for kids.
Okay.
And it starred Danny DeVito as the voice of Satan. And he sired a child with I believe a New Jersey woman. And it was about his daughter trying to grow up as a normal kid, and Danny DeVito Satan trying to be involved in his daughter's life. So
Of course, it's Jersey.
Mike Johnson went off the rails after seeing an advertisement for this during college football. I couldn't get the remote fast enough to shield my 11-year-old from the preview, and I wonder how many other children were exposed to it, and how many millions more will tune in the new series owned and marketed by Disney. The trailer included dark images of hell, demons, and satanic imagery, and an explanation that the main character is the Antichrist. 13 years after being impregnated by Satan, a reluctant mother, Laura, and her Antichrist daughter, Chrissy, attempt to live an ordinary life in Delaware, but are constantly thwarted by monstrous forces, including Satan, who yearns for the custody of his daughter's soul. What in the world? I could write volumes this morning and unpack pages of Bible verses here, but instead I'm going to state the obvious. Please be careful. Our job as parents is to guard the hearts and minds of our kids. This culture has become alarmingly dark and desensitized, and this is not a game.
All right.
Take it away, Aaron.
So, as we know, I'm not a supporter of the devil. But I do love Danny DeVito, so I'm a little torn here.
Did anybody watch this show? Apparently, it's only been like one season.
I've never even heard of it. Yeah.
He made a great penguin.
Yes, he did.
So talented, man.
He was probably the best part of Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
How about his twin brother, Arnold?
You don't get a better look at Twin.
Yeah. Wait, they were also in the movie where Arnold had a baby, right? Wasn't he the father? Or no, he was the doctor. Was he the doctor? Or the father?
I don't think I actually watched that one. I saw scenes for it, but I don't think I watched it.
I can't remember.
Can't think of it.
But I love Danny DeVito is one of the best character actors out there because he does a great job playing himself.
Yeah.
And it's
Super
just
talented.
magnificent. So I love Danny DeVito. I've always been a fan. I think that he is just fantastic. Would love to sit down and have a beer with him someday. It'd be great.
So it was perfect that you picked this up because I wanted to ask you this question because I have this vague thing in my mind, but I just don't remember examples. I feel like there's a pretty rich history, even in Christendom, of satirizing the devil.
Absolutely.
And when I think about having Danny DeVito play the devil and having the devil raise a daughter in New Jersey, that sounds
Jersey,
like satire.
of all places. And that's kind of how you know it's satire. It's Jersey. I mean, automatically, because look, there's actually urban monsters that come out of Jersey that are mythical, right? So automatically that this is satire.
What are your thoughts on him doing the show though, and the writing of the show and the story?
I haven't seen it, so I can't speak to the show. I can say that seeing his body of work, he loves satire. He loves making fun of things. I'm sure that this probably does the same thing. And this is speaking from somebody who has not seen the show yet, but just knowing Danny DeVito's body of work, it's probably on the dark humor side. If you ever watched Always Sunny in Philadelphia, very dark humor, but it's satirical. It's funny. Yeah, it's great.
Isn't even Dante's Inferno supposed to be kind of deeply ensconced in satire and meta commentary and stuff like that?
Great. Have you ever watched the anime?
No, I have not.
Oh man,
Sounds interesting.
You have to watch it. It's fantastic. If you have kids, do not let them watch it. Do not let your children watch Dante's Inferno.
If you can ever sneak away in the closet on your phone, then watch it.
It's like a full hour-long anime on somebody's take on Dante's Inferno. It's brilliantly animated in Japanese style. Fantastic. Very graphic, but fantastically well done. Yeah. Don't let your children watch it.
Well, this is where I'll have to be the conservative and kind of draw my line here, I guess, in a way, because I still have younger kids. I kind of feel you know what? I kind of really sympathize with what he said about it. I mean, because it's a way of, I feel like, I mean, I get the satire piece, and I get the person that they use to really kind of sell it, because he can sell anything. He's great. He's super talented, no doubt. But it's a serious issue, and there is an actual, you know, dark side to Satan.
Absolutely.
Satanism
100%.
is real. Cults are real.
100%. Yeah.
Dark magic and all of this stuff is a real thing, and to kind of make light of it, even though they may market it not for children, they know it's going to pull children in.
Oh, I'm sure.
We absolutely know that it will, and I think it could be a slippery slope.
It could be.
So this is the conservative side coming out of me.
There are cartoons that are 100% out there that they tell you front and center, this is not meant for kids.
Yeah.
Rick and Morty's one of those, right?
That means nothing.
You know, South Park, historically, do not let your kids watch,
But
right?
what happens when kids see that?
Well,
It's not meant for kids.
some of them are scarred.
Watching it,
But,
yeah.
What happens when kids watch that Exorcist movie with what was it? What's the guy's name?
which one?
The one we reviewed.
The Pope's Exorcist.
Yeah. Who's
No.
the guy in there? I'm trying to blank.
Russell Crowe.
Russell Crowe, yeah.
Crowe. I was about to say Russell Brand. I'm like, this is a very different Russell.
You don't want him in the
Oh, wait. Now that you say that, though, who would want to see an Exorcist film with Russell Brand?
I'd watch it.
Show of hands. Show of hands. You have now proposed something I want to see.
You got thoughts on this one, Sam?
Pardon me?
You have thoughts on this subject?
And it could be either Danny DeVito or Russell Brand as the Exorcist.
No, I'd like to take Aaron had about the satire. I mean, if you want to make every subject serious, you can.
Yeah.
I prefer just to let that one rest as satire. I'm good with that.
There you go.
We pause right there. We're going to do a word from our sponsor.
Have you ever wanted to train Muay Thai? Perhaps there's no gyms near you. Perhaps you work odd hours. Perhaps, like a few of us, you don't like germs. Whichever way it goes, you can train online with some of the best instructors from around the country, either live or in class with other students. Living Muay Thai gives you the chance to do all of this and much more. So jump into live classes and on demand right now. livingmuaythai.com.
Hey, it's Gumby here from Bible Over Brews. Are you looking to get some editing done in your podcast? Maybe you don't have the hours or time it takes to edit your content, but you still need to get it done. Maybe you need a customized track or a song for your podcast or your next project without having to worry about copyright issues. Well, look no further than soulworkmusic.com, where this footwork is done for you. I'll get that editing, post-production work done right for you, or create you that customized song that fits your project or podcast to help support your life's work. If this sounds like what you need, reach out to me at soulworkmusic.com. Again, that's soulworkmusic.com. And remember, there's nothing taboo over brew.
All right. All right.
All right, I'm gonna pick a topic in here.
Let's go.
To influence the
Of
narrative.
course you'd pick that
So
one,
I
Keith.
picked
We all
Gay
knew
Friend.
this.
This is a very quick take. I'm literally just going to read the story because I wanted to have a couple quick takes in here. This is actually like a kind of, in context, a sweet story. About,
Oh, okay.
Mr.
Okay.
Johnson.
All right.
So there was like a very in-depth, like kind of going through his history article on NOLA.com. So I presume that's like the New Orleans newspaper, whatever it's called. Like Cleveland.com is the plain dealer. So it's going through his history, some of his like local advocacy type stuff. You know, he's been a very anti-gay marriage, LGBTQ issue person. But I'll quote, Johnson frequently found himself sparring in the press with L. Harvard Scott III, a Shreveport attorney in a same-sex marriage who was among those who had sued to overturn the ban. Scott and Johnson met for the first time in January 2015, and Johnson immediately offered his cell phone number. They could initiate a dialogue, even if they couldn't agree, Johnson said. I sent him a text one day, and he responded quickly, Scott said recently. He's been like that ever since. Scott added, I don't agree with him on much, but he seems to respect me and appears to be willing and interested to hear my views. I've had friends say, you're friends with him? I say you can't change people's minds if you don't talk to them. So hats off. And it's a common thing people ask when you go hard at anti-gay stuff. Do you even have a gay friend? He apparently has a gay friend. Credit where's credit's due.
Well, wow. All right. Yeah. And the thing is that so I could see where a lot of people would give him flack for that. However, if we call Jesus, he had a lot of friends that were prostitutes and tax collectors. So I would say that that's a little more on the Christ-like side. That's kind of a bone I got to throw him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I give him 100% credit for that. Like the moment he gave that number, like there could have been, there's a lot of like kind of stories planted where it's like this person says that they talked to this gay person or trans person or whatever, and they agreed with them, and like they struck up this friendship. And a lot of it, I'm actually reading a book right now, and I plan to actually propose an episode that is an entire expose of this line of thinking, because I think it's actually been elevated to a core doctrine of the church, a meta doctrine.
Oh. All right.
But this book, it turns out these stories are fabricated. Like it's someone talking about something they heard from the person's parents. It's not like someone they talked to. It's not someone they befriended.
Okay.
Once you hear this is like, oh wow, like that's legit, totally legit. Hats off, Mr. Johnson.
Okay.
All right.
I'm gonna go a
Keith,
little
you
light.
surprised
You
me.
guys we're gonna start losing the fun topics.
Keith,
Mark.
you surprised me.
Topic.
All right, so this one is ones where we have a set 2 questions for everybody, rapid fire questions here.
Nice.
All right.
I like those.
Mike Johnson, of course, is Southern Baptist. He's very committed to Southern Baptist. I'm guessing he doesn't drink a whole lot of beer. But in the episode about, what was that episode about? I can't remember what that episode was about, but of the podcast. But he was briefly touching on the Bud Light and Dylan Mulvaney thing. And this quote is not about Dylan Mulvaney, but I picked it very, very specifically. The company, Anheuser-Busch InBev, has lost billions in stock value, and literally we're seeing stories this weekend. Literally, Anheuser-Busch cannot give away Bud Light. All these unsold stocks of beer are lined up, and it doesn't have a long shelf life. So I'm not talking about any of the culture war stuff in the moment. I just want to ask everybody, what do you, practically speaking, to you, what is the shelf life of Bud Light? How old does the Bud Light have to be before you will no longer drink it?
The moment it's brewed, I will not drink
Yes.
Where's our
Hold
bell?
on. I have to walk over.
Where's
Hold
our
on.
bell? It's behind you.
That gives a hats off right there. Right there.
Thank you for joining us tonight, and we'll see you next time.
I have never been a fan. Thank you.
That was great. See, I was gonna say okay, so the actual shelf life of Bud Light is 3 to 4 months, but if I want to drink piss, it doesn't matter if it's 1 day old or 3-year-old piss. It's still piss.
There's that argument. Yeah.
Exactly.
To Bud Light, to Budweiser's credit, they have bought some good craft breweries,
This is true.
but Bud Light's not one of those.
Yeah.
So our second question is, so of course there's been this whole Dylan Mulvaney thing that has reportedly cost Budweiser or Anheuser-Busch InBev a lot of money, has resulted in drastic decrease of sales of Bud Light to the point that it actually is no longer the most popular beer. It's one of the Modelos.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's not the Negra Modelo. Like it's like a different one. I forget.
I love Modelo. So,
And then there is some debate whether the actual decrease in sales is as a result of people against Dylan Mulvaney and trans folks boycotting Bud Light, or is it people in general being ticked off because of the subsequent lack of decent response from Bud Light? Like they didn't support this person, and they were generally just mealy-mouthed about the whole thing. That aside, what do you think? What would Anheuser-Busch InBev have to do in your mind to get all the conservatives to be like, oh man, it's cool, we're gonna go drink tons of Bud Light now? What would they have to do at this point?
change the brand. Actually, just change the brewery in general.
I was thinking change the recipe.
Yeah.
The whole facility. I mean, it's
Start over.
So I was gonna say I can't remember like a specific one of these advertisements, but I can remember the Simpsons parody of it. You remember like one of the Simpsons parodies where they have like Duff beer and it's like all the Duff beers like going on the football field and stuff like that? I feel like that was a real Budweiser commercial at some point. Probably?
I gotta say, I think Duff beer is actually Miller Lite.
Okay, maybe it wasn't Bud Light. So anyway, though, think we got the Super Bowl. I mean, not coming up soon, but coming up, in a few months.
Mm-hmm.
So they would need to do one of those advertisements with the like 3D animated beers and anthropomorphized beers, and they would have to be storming the Capitol. And like they would have to have one of the beers with like the head with the flaps, like sitting in Nancy Pelosi's chair, like the MAGA shaman guy who's like had like all the drawings on his chest, but as a Bud Light. I think they would have to do that in order to get people back on board with Bud Light.
Yeah. I mean, I've never been on board with their beers, so that wouldn't work for this conservative.
It's Bud Light. It's
Yeah.
Clearly, somebody was drinking it. It was the most popular beer in America for a very long time.
I don't know among who though. That's the problem.
It was cheap.
It was cheap, but that's the problem.
I mean, for as much beer as we're drinking tonight, college students drink a lot more, and it's got to be cheap. So maybe that's it.
It could be. I've always said if you actually look, I can take one quality IPA, a good pint, right, and I will be so satisfied, or a 6-pack of Bud Light. One has less calories, far better taste, and will sit better in my stomach.
You know what's interesting, though? That whole issue with what's her name?
Dylan Mulvaney.
Dylan Mulvaney. Okay. That specific beer was never intentionally supposed to be released to the public, right? Like, we can't just go out and buy her beer.
No, it was literally like something they sent her as like an appreciation.
That's true.
Yeah.
So here's my point to that, is that if this was something between them as a company and her as a thank you for whatever they feel like they need to thank her for, they as a company should just said, hey, please don't promote this. It's just between you and me. This isn't something that we're going to put out there because we're not going to sell it.
Yeah.
They could promote someone who's on a complete far right. They should do the same for him. If they're not going to sell it to the main public. But I think it being released just knew it was going to stoke the fires of division.
You almost wonder if it wasn't a Budweiser competitor that instigated it.
If I was the company, I would have put a clause in the agreement between me and her, like, look, we're going to make this for you. We appreciate what you're doing, and as a thank you, we'll do this for you. But here's a little proviso. If you publicly support it and put it out there, we're going to sue you.
So the marketing agent that was responsible for hiring her was fired right afterwards. So it does make you wonder if she didn't take a pay on that from somebody else.
Well, but even just like, I think if you distribute something to an influencer who's, living is going on, TikTok or whatever and doing stuff, I think once you give that something to them, you expect them to probably go on video and talk about it.
Yeah, but it's never been done before through Bud Light. They haven't.
Well, it was a promotion for a bunch of different people. I think there was something she did before, and then it was like some kind of contest thing or whatever. I don't really remember all the details.
But Bud Light's not going to make a beer for Ben Shapiro. They never will, right?
True.
Or pick your conservative that you don't like, whoever he or she may be. They're not going to make a beer for them. Why did they choose this?
Listen, if Ben Shapiro agreed to support Bud Light, I'm pretty sure they'd make him a beer because that man has a lot of followers.
But my point is that it didn't happen.
Right.
I think it's honestly kind of hard to predict what stuff like. So promotion on social media is like this putting out a billion different things because there's so many influencers out there. You're talking about all these like micro audiences, and like I think it's actually might be harder to predict than we think on what would go wonky and what wouldn't. I was listening to a podcast, like it's not like a universally popular podcast, but it's a podcast that's popular in like Catholic circles, and like basically the guy, like he gets people on there for 3 hours and if someone were to actually really go after it, like you could get anybody in that podcast canceled because of something they're either tripped in the saying or even not.
Oh,
even
I know
doing
which
what
one
they
you're
do.
talking
You know
about.
what I'm talking about?
I know which podcast you're talking about.
But it hasn't happened yet. And like, even if I were to go on Twitter or X right now and do it, the fact that the algorithm is so screwed, nobody would pick it up anyway.
That's true.
Like, it would take the right, perfect person picking that up for it actually to mean anything.
Yeah. Which, speaking of that, I'm surprised you didn't put an X on there as a question.
I don't know if he's talked about X. I mean, he's on X.
Yeah.
I patrolled his X. I hate saying X.
Yeah.
But it was pretty boring. It was there was a Halloween graphic where they made like a an orange pumpkin with an orange backdrop, and they put like the Capitol building in the middle, and they had the GOP logo in the side. And I was like, oh, that's cute. They made a GOP Halloween logo.
We should have a podcast just about how many times Elon uses X.
Yeah.
Because it's frequent.
Well, going back to your original question about what can they do to retain or call back their original people that they market to, their original client base, right? After this all happened and it blew up in their face and their stock went down, their sales went down, blah, 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 and people started shooting up their beer for target practice, etc. Anything that Bud Light did after that almost felt like they were just trying to placate their original audience.
Yeah.
Now they're going back to their strong horse, manly, whatever, however they did before. And it felt like, we see what's going on now. For me, if I was in that original client base that always got their beer and this all happened, in order to get me back would be a sincere apology, a simple, sincere apology that they didn't mean to do that. And that's it. Just say, you know what? We didn't intend to do this. We're sorry. We're sorry. We're sorry. Why is that so hard to do?
The interesting, if they would have said sorry to either group, I think they would have been okay.
Yeah, but they didn't have a far left group as their market base, especially people who supported the LG.
So what they didn't do in their original statement afterwards is they didn't support Dylan Mulvaney. They didn't not support her. They didn't support her either. So what happened is all the people who could have been like, oh, yeah, I'm LGBTQ affirming and I'm really proud of Bud Light. Those people didn't show up because they weren't proud of Bud Light because they were just like, this is mealy mouthed and stupid. Yeah. So they tried to hit the middle. It was almost exactly the middle and it made nobody happy.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. Just let it be about your business. And if your business was always catering to one set of people, then this is still a corporate America. Make a business decision and do that. Instead of jumping on whatever might be culturally. I'm going to stop right there.
Speaking of culturally something.
Oh!
All right. Gumby's up.
No,
is it my turn?
No, Tom is up.
Oh, wait, no, Tom just picked beer, though.
Oh, he just did beer.
Oh, he did? Okay. Okay, Gumby.
Ooh, some good things on there. I'm going with gun control.
All right.
Yes.
That's actually one of his marquee topics. Oh, my goodness. Okay.
Oh, it's a marquee topic.
I mean, so
It'll
the
be
things he
fantastic.
literally says the craziest crap on is gay stuff and mass shootings. We have a couple different quotes here. At the end of and this is the one actually from the most recent shooting in Maine. At the end of the day, it's a problem of the human heart. It's not guns. It's not the weapons. At the end of the day, we have to protect the rights of the citizens to protect themselves, and that's the Second Amendment. So let's up it a level though. This is from many years ago, from I think the aftermath of another school shooting. Many women use abortion as a form of birth control, in certain segments of society, and it's just shocking and sad. But this is where we are. When you break up the nuclear family, when you tell a generation of people that life has no value, no meaning, that it's expendable, then you do wind up with school shooters.
Huh.
So legal abortion has caused school shooting.
Wait, what? Wait, how do you? Hold
I
on.
was with him
I'm a
up
little
until the
confused.
point of school shootings. Though.
Yeah.
He took a turn there. I think this was
That's-
actually something he said in front of a church.
So is there like a paragraph missing?
No.
Oh,
We read it again. That last part that is in question.
Many women use abortion as a form of birth control, in certain segments of society. And it's just shocking and sad, but this is where we are. When you break up the nuclear family, when you tell a generation of people that life has no value, no meaning, that it's expendable, then you do wind up with school shooters.
Wait,
I don't know how he made that leap.
it's a huge leap.
I'm on board with, I'm against breaking up the nuclear family. I've stated that before.
Absolutely.
I think that's a great value loss, but I don't understand how he got to mass shootings from there.
There's another, I don't have it on here, but there's another quote where he goes from teaching evolution to school shootings, I believe.
Is he for gun control or against? I don't know what he's
trying to say it's any other reason than the guns. So it can be legal abortion, it can be, divorce or whatever, but it can't be the guns. It can be that in general, it can be that we are a godless society.
Wait, so Ken Ham caused it?
Let it go, dude.
Hey, wait a minute. Ken Ham's trying to prevent this. He's trying to teach everybody that evolution is wrong. And once we do that, we'll all be like, oh, yeah, we should stop shooting each other.
Aaron has been itching, man.
Oh, man, I can't wait for the Ken Ham deep dive. Oh.
All right, so I guess I go first on the gun control. To some extent, I think he's reaching on many areas of the gun control. I am a firm believer of the Second Amendment. I believe a person has a right to arm themselves if they go through the appropriate channels and have the right training, and they go through whatever their laws of their state says, and it in that way. Aside from that, I don't know. I don't really know what else to say about that. In terms of the mass shootings, there's so many other factors that we need to look at. Maybe the tie he's trying to make, in terms of the nuclear family being broken up. I mean, I have noticed that within the last few mass shootings, that a lot of them happen to be with shooters who claim to either be non-binary, trans. The Nashville shooter who shot up there went back to her Christian school that she was a part of and killed people. So I don't know if that's what he was trying to make a connection to, but I think a big piece that never really gets discussed about is the kids who are heavily medicated with like psychedelic drugs.
So that's where I was going to touch on. You're 100% right. So almost every shooter, and I'm not going to highlight any lifestyle because there's various lifestyles involved, but almost every shooter is heavily medicated on psychiatrics.
That is something that is a common denominator that doesn't get talked about.
Very common. And if you go through, I tracked, I think like 5 of them, and all 5 were on heavy medications.
Yeah.
That has to play a factor, right?
It does, and research has been done
know that.
on that. Yeah.
But you would. Sounds like root cause is lurking in there with.
Yeah.
That's a theme. I mean, so as Sir Arthur Conan Doyle once wrote through Sherlock Holmes, if you eliminate the impossible, whatever is left, however improbable, must be the answer. So one of those common themes in every one of those shootings is heavy medication.
Yeah.
So logic would dictate that has to play a factor.
Yeah.
I wouldn't know that factor. What he's going for in general, though, I think he's trying to throw out a bunch of different ideas, but his general thing he's going for is that it's a godless society that breeds mass shootings, or, a lack of a Christian society. But I always think it back to Japan has like 1% Christians. They have basically no mass shootings. So, like, it almost seems like if the common thread here is, or the difference between, say, Japan and the United States is Christianity and not guns, or the availability of guns, then it seems like Christianity makes us more likely to be mass shooters.
I'm going to push back on that a little bit.
It's an interesting.
Knowing a lot about Japanese culture, a little bit about Japanese culture. I'm going to push back on that a little bit because much of Japan is Buddhist, and a lot of it's Zen Buddhist. So I would say that they are actually just as spiritual as Western culture, if not more so. So I would push back on the religious side because you do have a huge amount of spirituality across Japan, like a massive amount of spirituality across Japan.
Fair enough. It's actually a very civically integrated thing where the temples are publicly maintained and on almost every corner practically, it seems.
Yeah.
Though I do think, actually I found the quote I was missing. I just had to scroll further down the page. And I do believe, despite their spirituality, most Japanese people believe in evolution. And here is Mr. Johnson. People say, how can a young person go into their schoolhouse and open fire on their classmates? Because we've taught a whole generation, a couple generations now, of Americans that there's no right and wrong. It's about survival of the fittest, and you evolved from the primordial slime. Why is that life of any sacred value? Because there's nobody sacred to whom it's owed.
Huh.
In that respect,
Cruel logic.
I can't explain it. I mean, we have way more young Earth creationists in America.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. We have more than probably the entire world put together.
Yeah. Hey, and speaking of that, there's practically no mass shootings in the Netherlands, and there's tons of psychedelics available there.
Well, that is true. That is true. I'll give you that.
That's another good take. That's talking about like Amsterdam.
Oh yeah.
Although
I've heard from people in the Netherlands that the people who over partake are the people who are visiting.
So I will say this, however, along those lines. So I was actually training with a guy in Muay Thai from Amsterdam, and I was like, "Oh man, you guys have like an incredibly laid back culture. Like everything is legalized. You guys must be high all the time." And he's like, "No. That's you tourists." He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Us? No." He's like, "Yeah, we might smoke a weed a little bit here and there." He's like, "But no." He's like, "The people who do the drugs are tourists." He's like, "And we understand that, and we know that." And then he went a little further, and he said, "In fact, you guys have the drug problem because we don't resuscitate people." So, I mean, take that for what it's worth. But, it's one of those things where if you look at it, the native people living there are not the people are the ones doing the drugs. It's the tourists.
Interesting.
Very.
Time for another topic. What you got, Aaron?
All right, let's see. Sodomy.
Oh man, he went straight for the jugular. All right.
Should we have another beer?
Let's introduce another beer.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Join us in part 2 for the rest of the conversation.